With the economy up, ISIS pummeled, criminals deported, 12 appellate judges confirmed, regulations slashed, and consumer confidence high, one would think that the president's poll numbers would be above 50. Well, they're not. Of course, the usual suspects in the media, those same people who erroneously relied on polls in 2016, they're eager to hype the bad Trump news.
Today, we have a president with sinking approval ratings, an unpopular piece of legislation, the tax bill, supported by just one party.
24% approval rating among women. I've never seen a number that low.
The president's approval rating has fallen to 35%. That's a new low in our CNN polling.
That is something that is a record low for every president dating back to Eisenhower.
Well, all things considered, it is better to be a popular president rather than an unpopular one. Remember when Bush's popularity began to take a nosedive in 2005 because of the Iraq War and his response to Hurricane Katrina? That was brutal. Well, back then, W dismissed the reports of his low standing with the public. He didn't fret much or do much about it. Then, you remember, the Democrats went on to win the House, the Senate, and 36 governorships across America. Then what happened 2 years later with the economy in tatters? Bush's numbers cratered, and Barack Obama was elected. Now back to Trump. He has a strong populist core, and so, of course, he wants to be popular. And he understandably gets frustrated when his message doesn't seem to be breaking through. And truth be told, the president has made some missteps. He's not perfect. And, of course, the media pounced on them. The bungled travel ban, the firing of Jim Comey, and the decision probably to get involved in that Alabama Senate race at all. And then, of course, Democrats have harped on the phony Russian collusion story for a year. And this all had a cumulative effect on the public psyche. But now, with the economy poised to roar in 2018, liberals and their lapdogs in the press need a fresh narrative. They have to freshen it up. And citing the Roy Moore loss in Alabama and Gillespie's in Virginia, the New York Times and other outlets are reporting that suburban women, even those who voted for Trump, are turning on him. Well, they're supposed to be, I guess, put off by his brashness, his bluntness, his tweet storms, and now, well, say the CNN Trump bashers, his lack of empathy.
It's about expressing normal human emotion. It's about expressing condolences. He doesn't do that first. First, he exploits it for political purposes.
This administration, writ large, is engaged in a larger game of trying to contain the president's worst impulses.
What I hear people say, even diehard Trump people, is we want humanity in this country.
You know what? No politician can win without empathy. He won anyway, even with numbers that suggested people saying, we don't think he understands people like us. Is it catching up with him now?
Yes.
I think the answer is
you can't learn empathy.
You can't learn empathy.
Well, I disagree with these clowns, and here's why. Maybe the president is sharing his empathy in a different way. And I'd argue that in his first year, President Trump has shown empathy for the people of this country in action, if not in words at all times. Think about his deep feeling for the working people, the middle class, Americans of faith, and job creators, entrepreneurs. It's all evident in his policies. So if ridding the suburbs of MS-13, lowering taxes, and improving school choice isn't showing empathy for the middle class, then what is it? If the massive deregulation and trade policies that are spurring job creation and driving the economy isn't showing empathy for the worker, then what is it? And I'll say, if driving black unemployment to an all-time low and laboring to get drugs off the streets isn't showing empathy to the African-American community, then what is it? To President Trump, I say the following. You've accomplished so much this year, but you're not going to ever get the press on your side. They're not going to give you credit. But I'll tell you this, more voters can and will be on your side with maybe just a few tweaks, a few modest changes. Perhaps the time has come to put aside a few of the Twitter battles. I like the tweets, but not all of them. And now it's time to humanize the agenda that you've been fighting for. You see, your predecessors, Barack Obama and Bill Clinton, were masterful emoters in chief. They could turn on the tear machine and like that. They could bear hug at the drop of a hat. And while they were often all emotion, they were at the same time, often no action. I say it's possible to do both. You know, I was thinking today about that incredible event that you held, Mr. President, in August of 2016 with angel families who had lost loved ones at the hands of illegal aliens. It's an important reminder of how policy and empathy can align. And when you listen and teach, nobody does it better. And if that's not empathy, what is it? Then when Hurricane Harvey struck Houston and you visited the shelter housing flood victims, that was powerful. If that's not what empathy, what is? I like seeing you out among the people. I like seeing you with children, the elderly, factory workers, volunteers. You can be really charming, and you can be really warm in person. And it's time to let more Americans see that. My radio listeners today offered their own advice for what you should do before the midterms, and one suggested a twice-monthly fireside chat where you explain important policies to voters and introduce them to the people who will be impacted positively by those policies. I think it's a good idea, and it's great politics as well. And I also like the fact that you deliver your message directly in that scenario, with or without the media's coverage of it. I say it's now time to govern all the people, to take your agenda to the inner city, to suburbia, to the churches, and to the areas of the country that have been somewhat or really unreceptive to the populist conservative message. It's hard to be a national party, isn't it, when every presidential election cycle we write off California and New York right off the bat. And there's no reason the Democrats should have a monopoly on the coast. That's absurd. Just go and try there. Give it an effort. And at times, just your presence, just showing up and listening, can be the most powerful action of all. And I say, if that isn't empathy and a winning strategy, what is? And that's the angle. Joining us now for reaction here in Washington is Byron York, Washington Examiner chief political correspondent. With me here in the studio is Congressman Sean Duffy, Republican from Wisconsin, and two Democratic strategists, Joe Trippi and Scott Bolden. Gentlemen, it's great to see all of you. All right, Trippi, let's start with you. Where am I going wrong here? You heard the angle. President Trump, not where he needs to be in poll numbers. You know, there are polls that say 32, some says 38, 35, but it's not where he wants to be, obviously. Do you think that President Trump can bring his numbers up? Don't make any cracks about they can't get any lower. They can. Can he bring his numbers up next year with some of these initiatives, going to the people, selling this message?
I thought you nailed it in terms of some of the things he needs to do, like get rid of, I'd go a little bit further, not some of the Twitter, but just about all of it. He often gets in his own way of his own accomplishments. I mean, he has had them, but then the next day he tweets something or attacks somebody. And I think that really gets in the way of his message. And you're right, the mainstream media, all the media jumps on that and makes him pay for it. But they would make any president pay for doing some of the things.
Oh, the ferocity and the velocity of the attacks on the media to Trump are. I worked for Reagan. I thought it was bad then. I've never seen anything like I'm seeing now with the press.
But he drives that narrative,
That's what I mean. He likes that fight.
He may have these policies. Republicans may like his tax cuts and his popularity and talking directly to people, but then there's this other bucket. This other bucket is tweets, the way he tweets anti-Muslim information or videos.
Anti-Muslim?
Anti-Muslims, whereby the British nationalists, which was quite offensive to so many people.
I think what some of the Islamists are doing across Europe is really offensive. But
they argue that this video was fine.
But you think anyone next November is going to think, oh my gosh, Donald Trump tweeted something from London, but the GDP is 4.2%. I don't think anyone cares about that.
That was an example.
That's happening right now.
Yeah, but I don't think that one example. I don't think that one example. We got to get Duffy in here, but I want to get back to you. Then Byron York will step in.
I don't think it matters what Donald Trump does. The media hates him, and they're going to go after him for the smallest error. You're partially right, Laura. I don't know if it's a fireside chat. I don't know if that's Donald Trump's thing. But he's great at rallies. Yeah. Get out there and talk
to people why
to
the policies are going to be better for African Americans, Latinos,
but he doesn't
new
use
immigrants.
the term African Americans. What is his national urban agenda? He wants to take credit for black employment.
First of all, some of the lowest rates in the African American community and lowest rates in the Hispanic community that we've seen in decades.
And in the white community as well.
But hold on one second. he talks directly to the American people better than anybody else. He's doing a rally every month. Do a rally every week. Speak directly to them. Every network covers it. Pass tax reform, grow the economy, put more money in people's pockets, build the wall, accomplish the agenda. This guy in our party is going to do
Not going.
great.
Let's go to Byron on this. Byron, I'm of the view that the voters want a calmer, they want a slightly calmer landscape, and that's not easy because of lots of incoming, and he wants to smash back. When someone hits him, he hits back, and it's worked for him usually. In the long run, it has usually worked for him. And he was derided for doing this in the campaign by a lot of people, probably Joe, at times you, and Scott, sometimes you. And it worked. And all these naysayers in the media told me the polls were going to destroy him. He was destroying himself. And in the end, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Florida, Wisconsin, etc., turned out because they thought the country was going down the tubes. Can he turn those numbers around, though, given the current landscape?
Well, a couple of things. We have heard these complaints, you're right, throughout the campaign, throughout his presidency. And we've heard a lot of Republicans who admire his sheer political talent, that unique talent that he has. And they always say, well, gee, you know, if he could only smooth off a few of those rough edges and not do some of those tweets. And when this is brought up with the president, I mean, he'll basically say, and how many of you have been elected president? This is something that he sees as having worked for him. And I think his big challenge next year is to get Republican voters and some independents to judge him on the substance of what he has done rather than the style, which does turn off some voters. And there certainly is something called Trump fatigue. It actually exists out there. But I think you're likely to see, especially with the situation in Congress, everybody's going to be running for office. He'll be using his executive authority more and telling the voters what he's done for them. And he's got to try to get them to pay the attention to that style to the substance that you opened the program with.
Joe.
Look, I think, first of all, I think Byron's right about it. He's not getting measured by the substance right now. Look at the things that they list off. That the Wall Street is gaining, breaking records every day. The unemployment, the number of jobs created, all these things, right? The economic confidence that the American people have, right? Okay, well, when you have that stuff through the roof, your favorables are supposed to be through the roof, and they're not. Yes, the media's out to get him. Fine, that's not it. That's not it. No, that's what the charge is going to be.
It's not.
It's because there's something wrong with his style that people do not like, and he loves that fight. And if he just put the fight away, he'd have a chance to reach out.
Because the media bashes him so much, I don't think people are willing to tell pollsters that they support him. In Wisconsin, the last poll we had, Donald Trump had an approval rate of 33%, and he won Wisconsin. So I don't think people feel comfortable saying that they support him as much as they do.
Maybe, but Donald Trump drives that narrative. If the media is going to bash him, then they're covering him 24/7, and they're covering the negatives about his personality, about how offensive he is, and credibility. Hold on, credibility. Super important. I think one report I saw from the Washington Post, like him or not, is that in the first year he's told like 3,500 lies in his tweets.
How many has the Washington Post told?
Well, you can take anyone's. I don't know.
I'll do the Pinocchios on them sometime.
But he's got a lot of Pinocchios. He doesn't have an urban agenda. He wants to claim credit for black unemployment being down. Scott, white unemployment is being down too. The economy is percolating.
Scott, let me get in here, Scott, because this is what drives me crazy about the identity politics in this country. On the one hand, it's what are you going to do? No, because I want to reach out to communities that have a negative view of Republicans.
But the president hasn't, and that's why he's having problems with them.
Let me finish. What I think is an objective fact is that the economy is improving. Donald Trump is a charming person. I know at times he gets a little defensive. That's fine. But he is a charming personality, and he's an engaging personality. I think what the Democrats fear most is Donald Trump actually taking his case to the African-American community in Detroit, in Chicago, in Oakland, in parts of Florida. I think they don't want him to do that because I think the Democrats are fresh out of ideas. They've tried everything, and 40 years later, the war on poverty was a whopping failure.
You know what?
They know it, and we know it.
I'd love for Donald Trump to go to Detroit and Chicago and L.A.
Right.
One, he'll never do it.
If he'll have a respectful hearing.
But he can't. He can't.
He
don't have
can't.
a
Why?
respect
Because
for him.
African Americans don't
Because
want to
it's-
hear from him?
No, because he doesn't have a message for them. He's offensive to them. He's done nothing for them. He talked about an urban agenda. What urban agenda?
What is your urban agenda? Handouts?
What's his urban agenda? No, it's not handouts.
Then what is it? An economy that creates jobs?
No, I want full employment, job training.
Well,
I
that's
want
what we're
better
getting.
education.
Do you want more illegal
You're not getting that
immigrants in
because
your
of Donald
community?
Trump? Go to those black communities
want
and say that.
MS-13 in your community?
No, I don't, and I don't
You
want
don't,
gangs in my
right.
community.
They're out.
And I don't want racists in my community.
They're
either.
out. So Donald Trump's a
Okay.
racist. You back on that?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, now
he equivocates.
that's it.
He is.
We just
He
won the
equivocates
argument.
on whether
We just
white
won the
nationalists and Ku Klux
So,
Klan
my
are
friends,
good
just
people or
everybody
bad
watching
people.
right now, I want you to understand what just happened on this show.
I didn't pivot. I told the truth.
I find this to be so sad for this country. Donald Trump, in 1 year, has done more for the African American standard of living than any president in my lifetime.
Name the top three things he's done. Name the top three things he's done.
And right
Focused
now,
on African Americans and communities of color.
And right now, the response to that is Donald Trump has to be a racist.
And he's offensive,
Okay, so he's offensive and a racist, but things are getting better in the African American community for entrepreneurs, for mothers who want to send their schools to other than failing public schools.
Send their kids to other schools.
Right, and
But
if
tell me
school
what
choice
initiatives
and
he's done.
okay, you dominated. If school choice and economic opportunity are not emancipators in the inner city, I don't know what is. And getting rid of the MS-13 drug. Sean, go ahead.
Listen, there's not black economics, Hispanic economics, and white economics. There's economics. And Donald Trump is doing it right. And when the economy grows, it helps black, white, brown. It helps everybody.
The economy was growing under Barack Obama.
This
It was
get
result of
one,
it.
two quarters in a row with 3% growth. You know what 9 out of
He inherited the worst economy since the 30s
Okay, we're
under
still back on
Republican
Bush.
because
We're
it's the
back on
truth.
Bush. Oh
We
my
get
God.
back to the truth. I'm sorry.
Trump's a
the truth
racist.
means something.
Okay, let me just get this straight. Trump's a racist, and it's Bush's fault. That is the Democrats' playbook right now.
Barack
It's
Obama
Bush
brought this economy
and
back.
Trump's a racist. That's all you got.
No,
Byron,
Barack
go
Obama.
ahead. Go ahead.
Well,
That's
you know what you
unbelievable.
said about the Trump and going Donald Trump and going to areas with large black populations, large Hispanic populations. That is true for every Republican, because the first thing you do in trying to, the most important thing you can do in a campaign is to show up. That's what Mitt Romney didn't do with Hispanic voters.
We told him to do it. He didn't do it.
In 2012. And look, it's not like they're going to come to a rally and then all vote for you, but voters appreciate when you care enough to show up. And the president could do that in this upcoming campaign. He's got a lot of Republicans to campaign for. I will say one other thing that has to do with what's going on right now. If he can say he has delivered a middle-class tax cut, that will help him.
All right, guys, I appreciate it. I wish we could go on for an hour. It'd be great. And I still love all
And another thing.
And I love all my parents.
And another thing.
Breaking just moments.